Hello, cooking enthusiasts. This week's video is a special gelato recipe. If you saw last week's video, you'll know I mentioned I may be switching to posting every other week instead of every week. But it's the pandemic, so funny enough, inspiration has struck. Production value is going to be even lower than usual, which I know is shocking, but we're going old school with just me talking and a series of photos. The goal for today's recipe was, could I create what I would consider a nearly gourmet quality gelato using entirely shelf-stable ingredients and as few special ingredients as possible. The main flavor is peanut butter, but of course you can apply this to any type of nut or seed butter you have. I probably wouldn't apply this recipe to Nutella, however, because there's a lot going on in Nutella. Now, this recipe contains no cream and no fresh milk, just skimmed milk powder, because even if you have access to those fresh ingredients, maybe you would rather not go out or conserve what you do have. And funny enough, even if I was making this recipe in ideal circumstances, I would probably use skim milk powder over fresh milk anyways. With any ice cream, but with gelato in particular, you want a pretty specific range of fat content. So for this recipe, all of the fat is coming from the peanut butter, which actually maximizes the amount of peanut butter we can use. The exact amount of peanut butter or other nut butter you use is going to depend on the fat content. You'll need to look at the nutritional label, or if you are processing from nuts directly, make an estimation based on standard fat content of those nuts. We want roughly 90 grams of fat from the peanut butter, so you need to take 90 and divide it by the fat percentage of your product. My peanut butter was roughly 50% fat, so I needed 180 grams in order to get 90 grams of fat. My peanut butter also had added sugar, so I factored that into the recipe. If you are using a more natural nut butter, you will need to add up to 40 grams of additional sugar to achieve the proper flavor and texture. The other optional step I did was I measured my peanut butter directly into an oven-safe vessel and then roasted it around 300 Fahrenheit for probably 20 minutes or so. For my preference, I probably could have gone either a little longer or a little hotter, but you can roast the peanut butter at your own discretion. Once the peanut butter was ready, I scraped it directly into a double boiler setup. I then added a very specific amount of water, which again will vary slightly depending on other optional ingredients you are using. Into the water, I also added lecithin. Lecithin and xanthan gum are really the only special ingredients I use. If you don't have either of them, I would simply replace both of them with a single egg yolk. I was stirring the water and peanut butter together on the double boiler, slowly but constantly. Once it reached 40 degrees Celsius, you then start adding your dry ingredients. For me, the dry ingredients were milk powder, dextrose, maltodextrin, salt, and the xanthan gum. I actually list a full second recipe in the video description with suggested substitutions. The 40 grams of dextrose you could replace with 30 grams of lightly toasted sugar. Later in the recipe, I use 75 grams of honey, and if you didn't want to use that, you would need an additional 70 grams of toasted sugar. The maltodextrin can be replaced with cornstarch, and once again, the xanthan gum would be replaced alongside the lecithin by using one egg yolk. Now, one thing about these substitutions is I have not directly tested them myself, but they should work pretty well in theory. The flavor will be slightly different, and the texture will definitely suffer a little bit, but the main difference is that it won't be scoopable directly out of the freezer. Once all of the dry ingredients were in, there was constant, steady stirring until the mixture reached 85 Celsius. After that, I brought it to an ice bath to cool down with again frequent stirring. Once it was below 60 Celsius, I added my 75 grams of honey, which again is optional, and you would replace with 70 grams of toasted sugar. Once it was below 30 Celsius, I added my booze, which again is very optional. It primarily just makes the gelato scoopable directly out of the freezer. Once all of the ingredients were in, I gave it a quick blend with a stick blender, and then it went into the fridge to rest overnight. After resting overnight, I gave it one more blend, and it went into the freezer for about an hour just to chill even further before churning in my basic ice cream machine. It was churned, and then as a final optional extra, I actually drizzled in some straight peanut butter directly into the gelato that I had microwaved a little so it would ripple in more. You could also ripple in a thin stream of melted chocolate and make chocolate peanut butter stracciatella. And then it just went into a container into the freezer to rest for at least another 12 hours. That is pretty much it. The flavor was really good. I mean, it tastes like peanut butter, so nothing mind-blowing, but still very satisfying. The more of my slightly specialized ingredients you can use, the better the texture will be. But either way, it should taste pretty delicious. I hope this video was interesting and you're inspired to try a recipe like this. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.